Moving now over into TV and film, how's that transition? Now we're working on a project together. You've stepped up to be the overall showrunner of the show. I can attest to the challenges of being an executive producer. From stepping into that role, what have you learned about yourself? How's that different from the course of your career so far in music? And how would you just describe that overall transition for you?
Yeah, to be honest, it does not feel very different at all, and I think that has to do with if I hadn't leaned into the running studios for like the satellite that I was working at. Um, if I didn't lean into running my own studio, if I didn't lean into running the studios for the label that I'm at now, I wouldn't have the skills, the verbiage, the aptitude, I guess, for just kind of connecting with creatives and dealing with different departments and teams and getting things to run um, in sync. But that's really what being a showrunner is. It's interfacing with different departments of creatives and getting them to work as a team for the sake of a show instead of for the sake of a studio running the right way or album getting created. But I see there's so much crossover in my experience. And I think the biggest change, I guess, the biggest transition, and we talk about this all the time, and it's probably maybe the only thing that doesn't translate over is the verbiage. It's the terminology. It's the um, really just knowing the different aspects and what they mean, speaking the language, I guess, of this newer space. And that's why I've been reading a lot of books and studying master classes. I spoke about Dr. Lewis Jones earlier. He's a multi Emmy Award winning director. He's been a mentor that I've been, leaning on in recent times and looking for even more and more mentors to glean from and having a lot of conversations with folks, reading and studying folks like Rodney Barnes. Um, he's somebody that shares a lot of his experiences as a showrunner online. And I find myself on his social media and his website a lot where he details his experiences at, different stops in his career. Most recently, Winning Time, he show ran and um, worked on, Everybody Hates Chris. And, so Kenya Barris is somebody I've been, watching his um, fireside chats and taking notes. Issa Rae has an amazing course on Masterclass. So I think a lot of the intangibles came about through experience, leaning into these jobs where I really didn't know why I was there. And now I get it, you know, um, especially even jobs before I started working so much in entertainment, even those jobs, everything was kind of pointing and preparing me to have a lot of the intangible stuff necessary, but the stuff that is tangible, like the knowing what you're talking about and knowing knowing how to speak the language of the industry, knowing act structure, and that there's a different act structure for film than there is for TV, and knowing what a protagonist is and what makes a strong antagonist, and how those things are so important. And, there's a glossary of things that I still have to educate myself on, but that's probably the piece that I'm most focused on now.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I love the Issa Rae masterclass myself. One thing that I really took away from that was when she was talking about writing imperfect characters. Like that was something that was so huge for me because when I was first starting to approach looking at writing and character development and building characters out in my head and placing them in a world, I was so I don't know, I think it's very much like as people we strive for perfection. And so we sometimes when we don't have that foundation with God, we try to cover up our imperfections. And I think that tendency, that human tendency you can have, can naturally spill over into how you try to write and perceive character. And so with her class, that was something I really would never forget. And it made me think back to Insecure because I remember watching Insecure season 1 for the first time. And shout out Insecure. That was during my one of my favorite sets to do. Great group of people over there. But I remember watching season 1 and having arguments with people because I just did not like Issa's character. Like I did, at least in season 1, I didn't like how she moved. But it was such an. But I remember going to this picnic and having this huge, not me, but watching this huge discussion between like 6 people about like, oh, they're team Issa or they're team Lawrence, and why what she did was justified, why Lawrence did was justified. And it was really now people were having conversations about society. And I think that that's so cool as creatives where there's something that exists within inside of us that we can put out into the world and it can touch other people within their soul, if that makes sense.
You summed it up beautifully. I agree.